And then number two, the second thing that causes marriage to go south is unaccepted differences. Unaccepted differences. We are different. We may not recognize it. We don't accept those differences many times, and many times we even grow to resent those differences. How many of you ever heard the cliche, opposites attract? That's absolutely true, but once you get married, opposites attack, all right? Because what used to fascinate you now frustrates you. It irritates you. And how interesting it is that God has kind of wired the human race up in such a way so that you kind of naturally seek out people who complement you, who are a little bit different. You meet somebody and they're different from you, and you enjoy that. For instance, a very structured person in life may tend to seek out someone who's very spontaneous. Why? Because they're different. It's interesting. People who are reserved tend to seek out people who are outgoing because there's something attractive about that. And before marriage, many times we overestimate what we have in common with someone. And then we underestimate, our differences. And you're going to meet someone someday, and I've talked to them many times. Someone will come into the church, and they'll say they've met somebody, and they're talking, and they say, we have so much in common. We're so much alike. No, you don't. No, you don't. For one thing, he's a man and you're a woman, okay? There's not a single solitary cell in his body that's like any cell in your body. Every cell is completely different. He thinks completely different than you do, right? And so what I'm saying is this: we're going to have to learn how to get along. And we do that by accepting differences. Romans 15:7 says this: accept one another then, just as Christ has accepted you, in order to bring praise to God. Now, that doesn't mean that you just tolerate them. Am I right? No, it means we celebrate them and we realize that God wants to use those differences in your life. You know what I believe? I believe that God has a sense of humor, don't you? He often puts people that are completely different alike. He puts them together for a purpose, and I think He enjoys doing it. I wonder today, is there anybody here that's an early riser? You're a morning lark, up in the morning, and it's undoubtedly you probably married somebody who doesn't even believe in God before 11 a.m., right? They sleep in late. They say, if God wanted me to see the sunrise, He'd have scheduled it later in the day. Hello. You know why God did that? Because He wants to use that in our life. And there, one of you in marriage is daring and impulsive, and the other is cautious and reserved. Why? Because you need both of those elements for balance. And many times you marry somebody who loves to talk. Oh, it's wonderful, those first few dates. But let me tell you something, man. When it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you've got to get up and go to work the next day, and they're laying there in bed and they're talking and they're talking and they're talking, how many of you know you say, Jesus, help me? I'm just telling you. And how many of you love to spend money? You got any spenders in the house? Any married people that are spenders? No one's going to cop to that. I'm going to tell you who you married, okay? You married a penny-pinching miser that squeezes the nickel so hard the buffalo bites the Indian. Hello, I'm telling you. And one of you loves to cuddle. One of you loves, and then the other's a porcupine. One of you's neat and organized, and you're always on time. And the other is flexible. That's what they call it. I'm flexible. I'm mellow, and I'm late. We have to learn to accept our differences, not resent them. One guy said, I knew I was marrying Mrs. Right, but I didn't know her first name was Always. Okay. Here's the point. Do you know that God's number one tool in making you like Jesus is your marriage partner? your mate, your husband or wife. God uses them more than any other tool in your life to help you grow up spiritually. It doesn't matter whether they're a believer or not. He will use them. He will use them to sand the rough edges off of your life. He will use them to help you grow up in God. And God uses His differences to teach us stuff like patience, like understanding, like how to love people properly, like being kind, like how to overcome anger, like how to stop being selfish in life. Oh, I'm preaching good today. What I'm saying is that God takes people who are different and puts them together, and instead of allowing those differences to separate you, allow those differences to drive you to Jesus so you become more like Him and you can accept one another in love. Come on, give the Lord a big hand of praise. And then there's a third thing that tries to sink marriages, and that is unresolved issues.